it's a start. But it's a journey, and it's every day, and it's consistency.
Right.
I think we can all agree that consistency is the key to anything right now.
Yep.
Exactly.
Marriage, anything you name it, we have to work at it every single day. Nutrition, everything. So let's start with what is one thing, and then Belton will go next.
Well, how about then? If we're gonna work this through and pick three major things, let's start at the middle. Right.
Perfect.
So for me, starting in the middle means starting at the hips. So what's something that we get stuck in every day? And Dr. Pelton made a very, very good mention. We sit all day long. So therefore, for me, I'd say if I had to give you my one thing, I'd say, let's say, how do I want you to unlock your hips in 5 minutes?
Yep.
In 5 minutes. So we're stuck in a lot of hip flexion, which is the position we're in when we're sitting like this. We're stuck with usually a little bit of slump a lot of the times. So you're taking the thoracic spine, dumping it forward. So if I want to say, how do I give you something against it? We're going to branch out, right? So I want hip extension, I want thoracic extension, and most importantly, rotation. We're going to probably get into a lot of this, but there's 3 cardinal planes, right? There's the sagittal plane, the frontal plane, and the transverse plane. It's like your XYZ axis. Sagittal, frontal, and transverse. We operate sagittally front to back, so that's kind of like forward and back this way. We operate frontally side to side, which is kind of like this, and transversely in rotation. Of the 3 major planes, ladies, the one that we seem to lack the most
Transverse.
is transverse plane, because we like to do a lot of things
Grounding.
linearly. Yeah. And not for anyone's fault, because your eyes are located in the front, right? And everything we tend to do is fixated on where we see things. So we tend to figure everything must operate in that same direction. But in reality, a lot of other things are at play. So in the hips, I want to unlock you in 3D, right? So I'd say probably easiest thing in the world is to first, you have to be standing. And I'd say if we tend to be flexed a lot, I want you doing a nice big sagittal rock forward and back. Now, depending on the degree of your mobility, this might just be a nice easy little thing like this. But a front to back sagittal plane rock, a nice side to side, and you can get the arms involved to really increase the driver. Side to side transverse plane rock, and a nice transverse plane rotation. That gets played on if you want to make your legs stagger a little bit, if you need the balance, if you want to get a little bit of a wider stance. This is one of the first things I might do with, especially in an older population, or someone who's post-operative and they're just getting their feet wet with how well they move. We live in like this box, right? This 3D box, and as soon as you realize that your box has shrunk down and you're afraid to test the edges, your instability grows dramatically, because now the fear shrunk it more and shrunk it more. And my suggestion is, let's start from the hips and increase the size of your box.
Love it. Awesome.
That's
Thank
good.
you.
All right, so I'll go up.
Okay.
So I'll take the other end. Again, with a lot of our patient base, and G's absolutely right, when we're sitting a lot, you're always in that flexed posture. And the problem that we see here with our patients, and with just about everybody, I think, on the planet these days, is that as soon as the head comes in front, basically the sternal notch, which is this little hole that we all have right on top of our sternum, the head weight goes up geometrically. So a normal human head, do you guys know how much a normal human head weighs?
7 pounds?
Oh no.
Jerry Maguire, 11 pounds.
I know, keep going.
No, it's heavier.
It's definitely heavier.
I swear
Yeah.
Jerry Maguire. Didn't
So,
he say
yeah.
7
No, he
pounds?
said he got it wrong, I
A little
think.
boy
All right.
did it.
So
Don't
right.
believe everything in
So,
Gary movies.
well, you know what? Let's use the word or the
I'm
number
really upset
20
that
just as a
everyone
round number here, so, which is a lot. That's like a normal bowling ball, believe it or not. So generally, if our posture is upright like this, and we've got our chin over our sternal notch, the relative weight on the cervical spine is about 20 pounds. Let's say for purposes of this. Now, the cervical spine is composed of 7 individual vertebrae with 2 joints at each level. So that's 14 joints that are trying to maneuver this. And what G just mentioned about all those planes of motion correspond exactly the same to the cervical spine as well, too. And I'm kind of picking on this because the cervical spine will be the root of a lot of primary shoulder problems, scapular problems, upper thoracic problems, and also head symptoms like sinus congestion, sometimes headaches, cervicogenic headaches, migraines, things like that. So one of the issues here, especially for the neck, is that if the head is bearing forward in this position, it's definitely going to cause wear and tear on the facet joints in the spine as well as the disc tissue, which over decades can result in stenosis, disc herniations, and some very drastic things. So for purposes of this, what we want to think about, number one, is straightening posture all the time while you're sitting, which might mean something like sitting on the edge of a chair. with the knees below the hips like this to try and get the overall thoracic spine up and the chin a little bit more centered over the sternal notch. But the problem even with this approach is that most people are conforming to their seating surface, which is more like this most of the time, right? So again, most seats and chairs don't necessarily support us posturally that well anyway. Regardless of that, though, like with Julia working on the computer right now, she's forward bent in flexion with the thoracic spine. The thorax is coming this way. The head and neck are automatically going to go into extension, which is going to cause a lot of pressure, not only on the weight-bearing elements of the spine, which are the facet joints and discs, and they in turn will also cause a lot of tension in the posterior muscles of the spine. So one of the things we're harping on continuously is to try and mobilize the cervical spine for people to keep it active. Any restriction of range of motion intersegmentally in the spine between the joints can cause inflammation. It can cause reactant muscle spasm because of the nerves on the inside of the joints feeding into the spinal cord. And of course, that can lead to radiculopathies in the arms or shoulder or scapular dysfunction, as G was mentioning. So one of the things that we talk about continuously with people is to mobilize the neck on a regular basis, which based on research these days is moving in all the ranges of movement. But not compound motions, and I'll explain what that is in just a second. So again, rotation, huge on this one. Extension, flexion, gigantic, but again, in a good postural setting, so you want to make sure you're nice and upright. Lateral flexion can be a little bit tricky. That's called compound motion because there's also rotation involved in that motion. So some people have trouble with that. So generally, we do want to side bend the neck a little bit, but not to any point of discomfort. And there's actually some orthopedic testing that would tell us if people derive pain with that they could have capsulitis, maybe some low-grade disc issues or arthritis as well. So first thing, get the head moving. The other thing too, a very easy stretch to do, basically is just restricting a shoulder, either manually by your other arm or grabbing onto the bottom of a chair and very gently laterally bending, but not to the point of pain, just a little bit of a light stretch. And then very gently extending and flexing 4 or 5 times, up and down, slow motion, but again, not into a really painful position here at all. The other thing too to keep in mind is that sometimes this will stretch certain muscles in the neck called the scalenes, and you may feel some tingling in the arm with that, which is totally normal. So 4 or 5 nice and up down motions on one side, and then obviously flip over and do the other thing, or the other side, just in the same manner, 4 or 5 up and down motions, just like this. Really good to do. And that should help to mobilize the cervical spine. There may also be some audible releases in the joints with that, which is totally okay. That noise that people might hear is carbon dioxide and a little bit of nitrogen in the joint space. And the other one that we usually supplement on top of this would be basically shoulder shrugging, which is a very physical up shrug for about 5 seconds, a forced down shrug for about 5 seconds, and then retracting or pulling backwards on the shoulder blades for another 5 seconds too. And this will help to stretch out some of the upper thoracic muscles, as well as some of the shoulder and shoulder blade muscles as well too. Nice and easy, it's quick, a couple minutes, done repetitively throughout the day, goes a long way to counter the effects of sitting on the cervical spine and upper thorax and shoulder.
I think an important thing too for a lot of people that I tell the same things to, especially like in your car driving,
Right.
you're at the stoplight, you have 5 repetitions in you, you go for it. But as Dr. Pelton was saying here, those nice slow glides, significantly more important than the way we used to hold stretches or hold movements. Taking a muscle perpetually through end ranges of motion within comfort is paramount for the muscle to learn that motion and stretching together is good, as opposed to statically holding that stretch the way we're normally taught all day long. To give it some motion and give it some repetition, so much better
Absolutely.
for those muscles and those joints to get fluid in and out, in and out,
Yep.
in and out, in and out. Good
Yeah,
flow.
in one of our treatment rooms in our office, we've got a large poster that talks, and it kind of, in maybe exaggerated terms, but it basically says that our bodies live or die by motion, and it is very, very true. I mean, think about it. You know, your blood has to
We're
circulate,
animals.
your oxygen in and out. You know, food has to go in and out, obviously. But movement is really healthy for the body, as you were saying, even in micro amounts. So anything you can turn into movement. And again, that helps to stimulate the nervous system, central nervous system, the mechanoreceptors, the muscles. It makes your body feel better when you get more motion.
And I want to, because that was a lot. That was only 2 things real quickly. So I'm going to summarize what you said too in
Did you doubt us at all?
I first of all, I think talking like that to the audience, that's sexy when you have that much vocabulary. Let's be honest, okay? So if you didn't understand a word they just said, I'm going to just make sense of it, okay? We have 3 planes of motion. I'll do this one, you do that one. 3 planes of motion, frontal, sagittal, and transverse, okay? He just showed us how to move in 3 planes of motion. His biggest tip and giveaway right there was you can move forward and back, okay? You're swinging your hips, right? A little bit of back, a little bit of here, okay? And we're going to break that down for you in and then a little twist, and maybe not. Just kidding. So I just want to. Sorry about that one.
It's all
But
movement. It's all
It's all movement. But again, the bottom line is we need to move in more planes of motion,
We do.
no matter what. That was one plane for the hips. Julie's gonna break down the neck for us.
Thanks for that.
Right.
Because let's just break it down real quick, because that was like awesome. I mean,
Yeah,
if you didn't
yeah.
take some notes right now, write down those words.
I'm gonna put this in as easy of layman terms as
You have
possible.
30 seconds.
Don't slouch when you sit. When you do, just check in with your posture. Sit upright, pull those shoulders down and back. We want to make sure we move those shoulder blades so we can target the thoracic cavity as well as the cervical spine a lot. So we're going to sit upright so we can better stabilize and support our head. And it's just slow, controlled movement. Some flexion and extension, some rotation side to side. You can just dangle the arm down or grab onto something gently to help assist that stretch. Go a little bit into lateral flexion, and you can go flex, extend again. And whenever you check in with yourself, if you have a few minutes, do different shoulder shrugs. Up, hold for 5 seconds, down, pull those shoulder blades down for 5 seconds, and then pull them back so we can really train those muscles through movement. Short holds, not long static holds, short holds so your muscles learn, hey, this is okay. It's not danger, it's actually a good thing.